Hi, welcome to Nature Sketch Creates Go Out and Sketch a Koʻoloaʻula flower instructional video. I'm Stephanie Rozzo. In this video, I'll show you how to sketch a flower similar to the Koʻoloaʻula flower, the island mallow. I'm here at the Secret Garden at the Huntington Central Park. You can go out and sketch at a garden, park, or even your backyard or at your kitchen table. Remember, this is just a sketch. Take your time, have fun. Don't get too caught up in accuracy and the details. First, make sure you have all the materials you need before you go out to sketch. Let's get started. First, take your pencil and draw in a rough sketch of the different plant parts. Start really light and then work to heavier marks. So I'm going to draw this flower. What I'll do is I'll place it over my paper into the spot that I want. I'll place it over my paper in the spot that I want and just kind of draw an outline to get the rough size of it. So I have to kind of go around a lot of other things, but I'm getting the basic size and layout of this flower. So really rough. It's really rough. Then I can use that as a base and start to draw in the different elements and size. So I'll start with each petal individually and draw them in towards the center with a slightly harder pencil line. Not too hard though, because I might want to change it a little bit still. Since this is a sketch, it doesn't matter if you leave some lines behind. It's a sketchy style. A lot of ants. And paying attention to how the leaves lay down. I'm going to draw this staminal column here. Draw the end as a circle and then it's kind of a tube. It's easier if you look at everything as a shape. So each petal is an individual shape. This is a shape, and block each part out. Then the last petal, this petal goes over that petal, so I'll make sure to erase this. This petal a little bit wider. You can keep changing it as much as you want. As long as you keep your pencil lines a little light, it makes it pretty easy, and it's fine if you have extra pencil lines. It's still gonna look great. Okay, so I have my flower. It might look a little different from the camera angle. That's pretty much what it looks like to me from where I'm sitting. I think this is bended a little bit more, so I'm going to erase it again. And some days I just sketch right on top, and some days I spend a lot of time erasing. Let me just do some really light lines. I'm going to draw in a few of the petal lines. Here, there's some dark lines and light lines. It doesn't need to be the right amount. This is just a sketch. So I'm just getting some in. This is a representation of the plant, not an exact copy. So there's just a few lines going up. And I'm also going to sketch in really light. There's an area in the middle that is kind of this light yellow. So I'm going to mark that in a little bit too, just so that I can remember to leave that blank when adding paint. So that is a pretty good representation of that flower. So next, I think I'm going to add the branch in. So the stem comes out from here, from where the base of the flower is, the ovary out, and then it kind of curves up towards the stem. And there are 2 stems coming off of the branch at each nodule here. And this one also, next to it, has a leaf coming out, but I'm not going to draw that leaf, so I'm not going to include it. And the other element I'd like to add in this is this flower bud here. And I think that's really pretty. So what I'll do is I will go ahead and do the same thing and kind of trace over, but I'm going to figure out where I want it in the image first. So here is the branch. It's where the stem is coming off. So I am going to draw the other bud right here. I'm going to have it coming out right here because it is true, not only true to the plant, but it will look good in the composition. But I'm going to draw this bud because I like the bud itself. I'm not going to draw a whole bunch. So I can trace that in a way to outline to get the size of that bud when I lay it over my paper, and then just move it off a little bit. So that I can draw it. And when you draw the outline, of course, it's going to be a little bit bigger than the flower itself. So always keep that in mind. So I'll go on the inside of those lines when I'm drawing the flower. So then I have the bud and the flower bloom. And then I'd like to add in a couple of, well, just definitely this leaf. I think I'll start with the leaf. So I'll extend the stem. And the stem is going down and then back. We're not including everything in the stem, just kind of picking and choosing. And then I think this, I'm going to have the leaf come off right about here. This is a representation of the plant, not an exact, so you can fudge it a little bit. And as you can see, my lines are not straight, so don't worry too much. So I'd like this leaf to land right about here on my composition. The composition is the layout of the picture, so where all the elements are that all come together. And I'm just tracing over all of these little ridges on the outside of this leaf so that I don't have to guess where they're at. It will make it easier to draw, much faster as well. This leaf is kind of fun because it has these round edges, so it has a little more variation, just the regular green leaf. And I'll pull it to the side, and I'll add the leaf veins. Will basically be guidelines, and you can't really see all of them, so I'm not drawing them all in. And I'm going to add a little line to where the browning is, just as a guide for when I'm painting. And this is not exact, I'm just getting an idea. where the browning was. And just adding a few veins, because once I move this leaf, it won't be in the same position. So this is my chance to get all of this in now. And it's okay if you have to change it later. Just adding a few more veins. I'm going to erase this area here. Any kind of marks on your paper, it's fine. This is a sketch. It's really not a big deal. Just getting a representation of this plant. So I like that leaf. I'm going to let it go. So I have a leaf, a bud, a flower, and I can add a few more pieces in here. There are a lot of other things, like this flower here coming off. That's really interesting. It's turning into a seed pod. There are also quite a few seed pods. So I'd like to add maybe a couple of little lines coming down. So you see there's a lot of little stems. I can add a lot more in this image if I want to. I kind of like where it's at though. And I found this bud. So I think I'm gonna add this seed pod in. Looks like it recently broke off. So I can actually draw it right in, just like this, as if it's coming off right here. So I'm gonna draw it down. And then kind of, if it was hanging, it would be a little bit like this, but I want it forward facing because I really like what it looks like inside. So I'm gonna angle it and just kind of trace it like I did the others. And making marks to help me with sizing. Just a really rough, quick sketch, and then I'll move it to the side. And go ahead and draw it in. I'm gonna start with this. Of course, it's bigger than here. So I'm just going to draw it inside. And then this leaf kind of folds over. Doesn't have to be exact again. We're just getting an approximate of this plant. And then it has this inner area. And then this kind of comes up here. And this curls over. And it has this central part. I'm not sure what it's called. It's kind of grooves. And then this kind of comes out straight. And you may be seeing something a little different on the camera in the video. Hopefully it's similar. And then there's a little bit coming off there, a little there, and then straight down. It's a tiny little stem. And I like the elements I've added in this. I have my flower bud, my leaf, and I also have the flower pod, seed pod. So I'll take this drawing and I also add, I'm going to add the name. This is the island mallow. scientific name, which will be italicized or underlined, is Malva. Sargentiflora. Oops, I missed some letters there. Again, easy to erase. Gentiflora. And I like how that looks, so I'll move on to adding paint. I have my paints that I saved from my step-by-step painting of the Koʻoloaʻula, and I'll just add water to them and revive them and use them here for this painting, the sketching painting, so that I don't have to take a lot of time to mix paints while I'm out here. This flower is very similar in color, so that works well. After I mix up the paint and pick a little bit up, I'll dab it onto my towel before applying it, and I'll start left to right, just getting one single layer of color over my flower image. And when it starts getting lighter, I'm just going to pick up a little bit more because I'm going to make this about the same color throughout. And if it's too much, you just dab it onto my towel. It's a little too much. And I made those lines so I know where to stop with the paint. And I'll just put this color, single first layer color, just like we did with the step-by-step over all these flowers, flower petals, not worrying too much about staying in the lines. This is a sketch. It's supposed to be a little messy, and that's what makes it fun. Just get that paint in. It's still going to look beautiful. So those are all the reddish parts. I'll get a little bit of the yellow color. Adding more water, dabbing it off onto my towel, and then I'll put that in there. And it's a little green in there as well, but mostly yellowish color here. So just add that in, kind of leading into the petals a little bit, so don't worry about mixing the paint too much, it's still gonna work out. And then I'll look at my bud, because I think that that's the yellowish color as well, a little bit of brown, a little bit of yellow. I'm going to start with the yellowish color underneath, and I'm just going to cover the whole thing to keep it simple with one single layer, and I'm going to include the stem as well. And then working left to right, I'm going to add some green. I might want to add some yellow to this leaf, so these really yellow areas. Before I add the green, I'm going to add the yellow, so I'm just going to add a layer throughout this. Oops, so totally outside the lines, totally fine, and add just a single messy wash over the top of this, just to get an idea of the plant, so we're not worrying too much about accuracy and getting everything exact, just getting the paint onto the paper and representing this plant. And this green does have a little bit of yellow tinge to it. Since we're putting the yellow under this leaf, I think I'm going to go ahead and add some yellow to the leaf, to the branch here and stems. And the branch is going back, it's a little confusing. And then the stem of all of these, I'm just going to go ahead and add that yellow underneath. Since it's a light layer, we're going to put green on top. And then I'll let that dry add another layer of color. The pink is dry. The yellow might need another minute. So I'm going to pick up a little bit more of the reddish pink color, but I'm going to make sure it's a little bit more concentrated so that it has less water added to it. And start to add, being careful not to smudge anything. Oh, it's all dry anyway. If anything's still wet, just be careful not to smudge it, and add a little bit. And see, there's a little highlight there on where the sun's hitting. So I'm just making sure that it's a little lighter here and darker on the outside to give it some dimension. And then on the petals, the outside tends to be a little bit darker, as well as anywhere that's in the shade, the shadows, and then along these lines that I drew, because they're adding grooves, so the light isn't hitting it as much, so it's a little darker. And there's some speckling down here in this yellow area as well. And of course, when I pick up the paint, I'm dabbing it off onto my brush. And I'm gonna move it this way a little bit because it looked a little different. Actually, no, I'll leave it. So some dark areas here. And then the light's hitting it pretty nice right in this space, so I'll leave that blank. I'm running out of paint pigment, so I picked up a little bit more of that. And then I'm adding it back onto my flower petal here. And very rough, not exact at all, just getting a representation of this plant. Pretty messy. Picking up more paint, dabbing my brush. I haven't really squeezed the barrel of my brush, releasing more water at all, because it's not necessary. The right color here and the right concentration of paint pigment. Again, this area is going to be lighter, so I'm not going to add more paint there, but I'm going to add paint here to the outer edges. That light's hitting here, and it's a little darker towards this staminal column. And a little bit lined and grooved, so just kind of add it in there. I'm going to do the same thing with all these petals, and I'm going to also add them to this pistil here. So I'll continue the other petals, same, adding a more concentrated pinkish red color. So then, after I get that in, I can add some of this green color, and inside here there's just a little bit of green. And then if you look at the bud again, and paint that in. Stem. And the leaf stem as well. And then I can paint this leaf. And it's mostly in the interior area, some places the sun is hitting, it's a little lighter. So adding that paint kind of on the interior area of the leaf between the lines you drew, because the edges tend to be a little bit lighter and you have the veins that are a lot lighter, so you leave that area blank. Add a little bit of these details to this seed pod, and then also a wash of color. Add the wash of color first, and then add some darkness afterwards, some darker areas. So really rough, just kind of getting the color in there. And it looks like there's some browner areas in here, so I'm just going to model that a little bit. And then go through and add some green throughout again, another green layer. This time it's a little drier and more concentrated color. Adding a little brown to the edges as well. And add a little bit more to this pod. Lastly, I'm just going to add a little bit more dark areas to parts of the petals. Next, we'll add some ink lines. So you'll want to make sure it's dry before starting. And then just go ahead and go through and add all the lines. This is where you get a little bit smoother lines rather than the rough, sketchy lines, and define those edges. Start with the smallest, the 005, and then work up to the bigger lines, just in case I make mistakes. Lastly, I'm going to take the 08 black micron to add some thicker lines. And I'll just go throughout and add some wherever I see some deeper areas or something that needs defining. I'm also going to write out the common name here. You can always add more paint once everything's dry, or more ink lines when everything's dry, to get this to where you want it to be. I like where this is at, so I'm going to leave it here. You can add whatever you want to yours. This is your sketch, make it your own. You can add your observations, of the environment. You can add the place. You can add whatever you like. Great job observing your world, and keep practicing.